The appeal of Hikikomori for me has always been a very personal one because the act of being Hikikomori is very personal. Like, to lock yourself in your room for an extended period of time, months, years, etc., takes a lot out of you. There's most likely going to be a very big and very large reason that you are a hikikomori because the fact of the matter is it is dangerous and it is stupid to do that. Like, it's insecure in some ways financially and in terms of just keeping your home, um, and also societally. Like, if you're not going to go through school, as I didn't go through school, then what are you going to do? You have to find creative ways to counteract that. And in my case, not going to school could be counteracted with getting a GED, but the point still stands that you're going to have to find creative solutions around your situation if there are any. And so there are many risks that are taken when becoming a hikikomori, but the idea is that the benefits far outweigh the risks, that the risk going outside into the world for you psychologically is just far greater than the potential financial risks of locking yourself away or the potential societal risks, the potential future risks of locking yourself away. That's the point that I'm making. So in many ways, it doesn't necessarily pan out long term unless you can get on neat bucks, which I potentially qualify for because I have a number of mental illnesses that do cause me actual disabilities in the real world. For example, crying spells. I will just cry for no reason, just randomly for long amounts of time, and so that could be potentially disabling for me in the real world. And I have various things like this, anxiety, etc. It can be, panic attacks. I get panic attacks when I go out in public sometimes and things like that. So, I'm someone who, long term, being a hiki can be fine because I can just simply apply for neat bucks or get a lawyer and then be like, hey, neat bucks. This is lawyer right here. He's got the good stuff and I've got the bad stuff. Let's make this happen. And then, you get them. So I think long term for me it would work out fine just because I do have actual disabilities, functionally speaking. But that's sort of a side tangent. Basically what I'm getting at is that hikikomori is a very personal decision, and to many it can seem odd. It can seem odd that one would take this position when going out into the real world to them seems easy. It seems like a normal everyday thing that they've always done. And for me, my hikiness kind of began in childhood because I was homeschooled for most of my life. Like, I had began school when I was 12 and a half, and so when I was 12 and a half and I went into school, I was severely bullied first thing. Not as bad as when I went into middle school. When I was in middle school, everything just got much, much worse. But when I was in 5th grade, because I was held back, which already caused problems for me because I was with kids who were younger than me, and kids who are younger than me, even back then, have always pissed me off. Like, I've always hated people who are younger than me. And so, that wasn't helpful, that I was put with a group of kids who were younger than who I was. I remember at one specific point, I think I had my 13th birthday while I was in 5th grade, and there were people who were in there who were 10, and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. And then they had their 11th birthday in, what was it, in like July or June or something during the summer. So they had ended up being the age that they were supposed to be by the time that they had went out. But I was with groups of people who were like 10, 11, 12. Then I was 13. There was another 13-year-old there, but yeah, I hated being around these other kids who were younger than me, and I hated getting picked on by them and fucked with, but I was sort of just a helpless soul because from that point, I had been homeschooled basically my entire life. And so I had no social skills whatsoever. I didn't understand socialization. I never went to groups or gatherings or anything with other homeschool kids. I just stayed in my room most of the time. A lot of the time I wouldn't even interact with my own parents because I would do my work by myself. And so my mom would not interact with me a lot of the time when I was doing my work. She would just give me my work, and I would stay locked in my room, and I would do that work, and then I would go and give it to her. Minimal interactions from then on, and there were various reasons behind that. One, my parents' potential divorce at the time, many potential divorces before they finally got divorced this year. And sort of all the shouting matches and all the arguments that they would get into, my fear of my brother, which I will not get into. There were just various reasons that in my house I had wanted to be alone. There were various motivations to stay in my room and to simply work on my schoolwork, which I had cheated on. I didn't actually do my schoolwork because I was so sad and unmotivated at the time that I just would not do my schoolwork. I would just cheat on it, and no one even knew that I was cheating. I did that for years, but, yeah, so I had been homeschooled for a long time with a family who didn't really pay that much attention to me. Like, when I would try to get attention from my family, I would actively be punished for it. Like, if I had came in and said, "Hey mom, I want attention," I would get the reply, "You're boring," and things like that. And that wasn't really good for my mental health at the time. Granted, the reason why my mom said or did a lot of those things was because she was in great emotional pain. Things were chaotic at the time, and the reason why those things had happened, the reason why they were said, was because everything was just so chaotic that when you're in that state of chaos, you begin to act chaotic yourself. You buckle under the pressure, and so sometimes that pressure can be taken out on others, which is unfortunate, but it's simply how things tend to work sometimes, and I understand that. I understand those effects on reality that pressure can have, and so I don't begrudge her for it. She is a very nice woman. She is a good woman, but at the time, she had not given her child the attention that they needed, and she had, actively made me feel bad for a lot of stuff that I had just simply not done. Like, being boring is an issue of, being like a child who's a child. Like, children are just sort of inherently boring, but, both my parents didn't sort of didn't see that reality that when you have a child, they're going to be boring, and so you simply need to give them the attention and the love that they need. And so instead of realizing that that's how children are, they just said, "You're boring. Go to the other room." I was told that many times. I was punished for being boring a lot of the time, and it sort of led me to have these psychological problems and self-esteem issues, because they were the only person who I interacted with. Like, I didn't interact with other people other than my family because I didn't leave the house. And the reason why I was homeschooled in the first place, the reason why I didn't leave the house, was because of my heart problems. And I was born with tachycardia, and so my parents were super scared and skeptical of the outside world in terms of my relation to it. And so, because I had tachycardia, they didn't want me to go outside. And so I barely ever went outside, and I even developed a fear of the outside, because I was told, if you go outside, you're going to have a heart attack, you're going to go into cardiac arrest, which terrified me. And so I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to see other people because I saw them as a threat, because that's the idea that I was raised on. And when I was in my own home, I didn't have much of a good time either. There were threats there, physically and emotionally, so I had dealt with that as well. And under all of this, under all these heart problems, under all these emotional issues from my family, under all these psychological issues going on, the only safe place I had seen that I had was my room. The only place that I could find solace in was my room. the only people who I had to interact with, the only people who I knew that I could learn from, had more or less turned on their child in the wake of their own emotional issues and in the wake of their own problems as a family. So I had spent the majority of my time alone. And this led me down the path of, talking to animals, talking to plants and stuff like that, because my mom had came up with this great idea that, well, if you talk to a plant, you can take out all your speaking energy, and it's good for the plant because of the CO2 or whatever that goes from your breath. So I would talk to plants for long amounts of time. I would talk to dogs and stuff. And I mean, I still talk to dogs. I like talking to my dog. I love my dog a lot. But it wasn't healthy for me emotionally just to not have another person there. And I think it led me to sort of see my room as this safe escape. It led me to see my room as the only safe place, because everywhere else that I could possibly go was not safe, emotionally or physically. In the case of my brother, I had been very badly abused by my brother for years, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of it just because I don't want to, I don't want to make this video sad or personal or weird or whatever, but there were very, very bad physical effects that I had undergone because of my brother being there, and it had gone on for years and years of no one knowing that stuff was happening to me. And so it sort of just led me to think being alone is good. Fuck people. Why would I ever want to be around people? Because people are just going to hurt me emotionally or physically, and the only people I had known had turned on me. And so that's sort of where everything began. But then I had went to school. I had went to school in, what was the year? Fuck, I can't even remember. 2014, I want to say? Yeah, 2014, January of 2014. I'd gone into elementary school as a 12-and-a-half-year-old. And then I had continued onto middle school, and then 6th grade was when everything started getting worse. I had been constantly harassed by people for how I looked, because I had long hair, and for the things that I was interested in, for the stuff that I would do on the internet, because when I was 13 I made YouTube videos. It's weird. People targeted me for, making YouTube videos. People tried to, say, wow, these videos are so embarrassing and so bad. Granted, some people thought they were cool. Some people came up to me and thought, wow, your YouTube channel is pretty cool. I just thought it was boring and I hated it, but some people actually liked it. And the entire time I had, the only thing I had was going home. Like, I had gone home, and I think I didn't have a door in no, I had a door in 6th grade. It was later that the door got taken off. So I would go home, and I would sit down and I would make YouTube videos, or I would just constantly watch YouTube and go into Facebook chats with other YouTubers. And that sort of felt like the only solace that I had. That felt like the only thing that I could necessarily do to make myself happy or feel safe, because at school I was constantly harassed, and the entire time I was there, I had just wondered, how do I get out of this? How do I stop this from happening? What I want is to be in my room, on my computer, where I can feel safe. And that's when the feelings started to come to a head, because I had very bad anxiety in school, especially in gym class. In gym class, that was when the harassment was at its worst. I had almost gotten into multiple fights in gym because people would just get so angry over me not being physically able. And of course I wasn't physically able, because first of all, I wasn't being fed at home because we were poor, and so we didn't have food, and so I ended up being skinny. And second of all, when we did have food, I didn't want to eat because I was so depressed. Like, I was hearing voices, and I was seeing things, and I was sad, and I didn't want to eat because I felt too unmotivated to eat. And so, like, even when we had food, I just wouldn't eat it. And so, of course, I'm physically unfit in that sense. And the reason why I didn't have any strength is because I had had tachycardia for most of my life. And so I had not gone outside because I had the potential of something happening to my heart. That was what my parents told me. Now, granted, tachycardia isn't as bad as they told me it was, now that I've actually done the research as a teenager, but they were telling me, yeah, don't go outside because it's dangerous out there. And so I didn't go outside. And so I got used to not moving around. And when you're used to not moving around, you don't get physically fit. And so, combined with actual starvation at home and not being able to move because of a heart condition, all of these things led to me not going outside and getting physically fit. And these people didn't understand this. They just verbally harassed me. They just shit on me the entire time when I was in middle school for not being good at sports. Of course I'm not good at sports. My circumstances led me to this point. And so, this led me to develop a mindset that people's circumstances are always going to be complicated. And every single time I tried to interact with somebody, I would try to realize this. I would try to realize that people's circumstances are going to be complicated. There's deeper reasons for why these things happen, and I'm going to respect that. I'm going to respect people because I don't know what they've been through. Because I went through that experience of people not respecting me or respecting where I came from, just treating me like I was lazy or bad, when that wasn't the reason. The reason wasn't that I was lazy, it was that my life had been fucked up, you know? So, God, and as someone with social anxiety too, because of the abuse that I had undergone and because of the lack of schooling in my early life, it made my anxiety terrible, and I had just viewed all of these interactions that I had as horrifying, and I played them over and over again in my head. Every single bad thing someone would tell me, I played it again over and over in my head, and it just made me feel so angry at myself. It made me feel so upset. And the hallucinations that I would talk to just made it worse because they just encouraged the idea that I was terrible, that I was a bad person. Like, I would see a person who wasn't there in my house, and I would talk to them, and they would just simply reinforce the idea that I should be dead, and that these people at school are correct. And that just made everything worse. None of these people knew where I was coming from. None of them knew what I was going through. And so I had made a vow to never do that to someone else, to always try and understand where people are coming from. And that's one of the reasons why I'm as reasonable as I am today. That's one of the reasons why I'm always as respectful to people's upbringings and to who they are today. And I don't act reactionary to people because I don't know what they've been through. And so I try to pay mind to that. I try to respect that because I was in a position where no one paid mind to that for me. And yeah, that sort of fucked me up for a while. That really fucked me up, was just being in that environment every single day where no one was respecting me and where everyone was verbally harassing me for who I was. And in 7th grade, it got even worse because I started constantly getting into fights at school with the other kids because I was basically done. I was ready to kill myself. I had been at that point. I was ready to. And so what I had been experimenting with was self-harm. And in one of the ways that I would do this would be to intentionally pick fights with people and to get on their nerves, granted with people who I didn't like, and with people who would just fuck with people at school. But regardless, it was intentional fight picking. And I wouldn't even fight back that much. I would just get beaten up because I felt that I deserved to be beaten up and I wanted to be beaten up. So I would just constantly pick fights with people. And after a little while of doing that, eventually in 8th grade, my mom had decided, okay, you're getting into way too many fights. This is clearly bad for everyone in our home, not just you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna homeschool you. And I remember my anger issues were so bad back then. Like, the first day that I had been homeschooled, I got into a big shouting match with my mom about how I was being schooled. And eventually that just led to me teaching myself, because my mom couldn't teach me as an 8th grader. She looked at this 8th grade stuff that I was doing and was kind of confused by it, and I wasn't helping because I would argue a lot with her because I had anger issues, and so I was just kind of being a prick, and that sort of caused issues within the family. And so this led to my 8th grade year being quote unquote taught by myself. I was supposed to do this by myself. And so where this went was me staying in my room all the time and not doing school, because my parents had no way of tracking what my schoolwork was. They didn't really want to. They were too busy with their own lives and with what they were doing. And so instead of doing school, what I did was watch Digibro vlogs and sometimes watch anime. I didn't really watch that much anime. But I would consume media. I would consume YouTube. I would wake up, watch YouTube, maybe record a few videos of my own, then I would go to sleep, and sometimes in between lay around wanting to die. And I didn't really talk to any other humans at this point because I had completely locked myself in my room, like not leaving for months and actively staying up at night in order to avoid seeing people in the daytime. I would quickly run out of my room, grab food, and then run back during 8th grade. I would not want to talk to other people. I would make sure to be up at night so other people would not see or hear me. And I was very, very paranoid about this, so much so that I started pissing in bottles. I had a lot of piss bottles under my bed, and I had tried to hide them. But yeah, it was crazy for a while. In that whole point, during all of 8th grade, I basically just made sure to stay in my room. If I was offered to go somewhere, if I was offered to talk to anybody, I would choose not to. I hated doing that. I only wanted to be in my room, laying around, wanting to die, and listening to Digi. And in that time, Digi was kind of like my only friend. You know, when you have this parasocial relationship on the internet of this person is going to put all of their life onto YouTube, and you start getting invested in that, and you watch all of that, it can almost feel as if a true relationship is developing. To be honest, this is kind of embarrassing. I had like a celebrity crush on him for a long time because of that, but it just sort of all came to a head during those middle school years. And then in 9th grade, I went back to school for high school. And then at the halfway point, because here was the thing, when I started out high school, I was so motivated. I was like, I'm going to do every single academic course that I can. I was in a college program. I was in the auto club. I was in the, journalism club. I was in all kinds of different things. I was trying to get all my homework done. I was so motivated. And I remember distinctly being in a call with Magos, where he had told me, my friend and fellow YouTuber Magos, who I've had on many podcasts, if you don't know who that is, he's a Warhammer 40k guy, who is in the Chromasticators, which is a group I used to be a part of before I left. But yeah, I was in a call with him, in like a Skype call at the time, where I was telling him, yeah, I'm gonna learn all these languages. I'm learning Italian right now. Remember that, guys? Remember I was learning Italian at one point. Old Outlaw viewers remember, Jesus Christ. And I was in this call with him, and I was saying all this stuff about all this academic stuff that I was doing and how I was gonna even start working out and stuff. And he was just like, "Well, Digi had did the same thing in high school, and I feel like you're just gonna go down the same path because you've talked about how much you hate school in the past, and I mean he used to hate school and he did that." And I was like, "Nah, Magos, you're wrong. I'm gonna work hard." Then the halfway point of the year came, and I left school because my anxiety and depression were just too bad. So Magos was right. I should have listened to Magos and realized what I was doing was, one, way too ambitious, and two, retarded, because there's no point to it. There's no point to going to school when I can just get my GED. And so at the halfway point, I said, fuck this. Fuck school. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sit around at home all day and I'm gonna get my GED. And that's what I did. I stopped going to school. And I was way less depressed after I stopped going to school because the work was unbearable. I hated the work and I fucking hated the people. Every single time I would go to school and I have to interact with these horrible kids. All my friends. I hated all my friends. They were all horrible people. They were all annoying. They all were bad. And, like, the act of having to talk with them every single day, because I would talk with them just to be nice. Like, I would just try to be a nice person to these people, but I hated all of them. They were all annoying, and granted, some of them were nice people, but I don't care that they're nice people. They just annoyed me. I fucking hate people. And, like, oh god. Holy shit. Yeah, that was an issue. Like, they would just cause me so much anxiety every single day, and they were annoying and they were boring, and I just didn't want to deal with it. I had to interact with these people all the time, and it gave me so much anxiety. When I would come home, I didn't have time to watch anime. Like, I barely had time to watch YouTube that I wanted to watch. Like, I would get home and I would watch fucking Zezazi videos. That helped me through a lot of early ninth grade, was watching Zezazi and other communist YouTubers. But when I got home, I barely did anything. I barely had time to do anything, because when you get home, you have a few hours, then you go to sleep, and you start the day back up again and go to school again. And I hated it. I hated how I never had time to do anything I wanted. And so I was done. I was fucking done. And I had to leave. So what I did was I said, yeah, fuck you, fuck school. I hate all of you. I'm gonna go get my GED. And that's what I did. And I've been here ever since. It's summer right now. It's in the middle of summer, but it's fixing to be school time again, and I'll be going in 10th grade. And still getting my GED, Not going back to the public school system. Too much anxiety. Makes me too sad. I hate people. I hate work. And so that was the origins of this. That was what all led me here. It was a combination of school factors and environmental factors. The school was unkind to me, the kids were unkind to me, and I had reacted to that in a large emotional way, because the way I had grown up was very traumatic and in some cases was very abusive, without getting into too much detail. And so I had developed a large sense of social anxiety, and I also developed social anxiety from being homeschooled for so long. It kind of socially stunted me. And so, yeah, it just ended up being a combination of all these factors that, as I said earlier, all came to a head and led to me being the Hikikomori that I am today. And I mean, I used to constantly think about, what am I going to do for job opportunities? What am I going to do to make money? Because there's nothing that has been particularly marketable in my skill set other than talking, but I hate talking to people. I hate people, so why would I want to go do that? And I fiddled around with the idea of being a teacher forever, but that just makes me so anxious. I don't want to be a teacher. That just pisses me off, that whole idea. And eventually what I realized was that I'm mentally ill enough to qualify for NEET bucks, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get NEET bucks. functional disability. And so I can do that. That's what I'm gonna do with my life. I'm just gonna be on Neat Bucks and do whatever the fuck I want because who cares? Like, if you're so upset by the welfare system the way it is, then just let me weigh it down. Because the more people who are on welfare, the more it's getting weighed down. And it's better than that money going to a new jet to blow up a third world country that didn't even do anything. Like, that money being in my hands is far better than it being in the hands of a new jet to commit war crimes. So, yeah, I don't care. I don't fucking care about where Neat Bucks go to or who they go to. I just want them. And I think I do deserve them, given all the trauma that I've been through in my life and given the actual functional disabilities that I have. My anxiety is too bad to consistently work in a work environment. My depression is too bad to consistently work in a work environment, let alone get there in the first place. And so, fuck it. Who cares? I don't need to worry about the future anymore because this has been something that I've constantly worried about. For years when I was in school, I would constantly think about, I'm gonna fail school. If you go back to my video, Struggles of an Outlaw #1, the first video, that video literally says, by the time I'm in 10th grade, I'm gonna fail. And I was going to fail 10th grade if I made it that far, but instead I realized I can just drop out and get a GED, and so a GED's easy to get. Like, I already understand everything on the GED test, so I can just get it, like, easily. And so, that wasn't an issue. And in terms of getting a job, as I used to say in a lot of my old vlogs and podcasts, I'm terrified of the future. I'm terrified of what I'm gonna do with this skill set that I have, where the only thing that I can really do that's applicable is YouTube, and I'm not gonna be able to make money from YouTube because the market is too oversaturated, and the videos that I know how to make aren't marketable. And so I can't do anything with that. And it takes too much effort to learn how to make videos that are marketable, and I don't care about making them, and I care too much about having fun to do anything otherwise. And so, what am I gonna do? There's nothing that I can do in the real world other than just minimum wage cucking, and, that's humiliating and drains your soul, and I don't want to do that. It's not a fulfilling life, so fuck it. Let's just get Neat Bucks. Who cares? Who cares about the future? Works for me. And so I've sort of realized over time, this is how I would get past that. This is how I would make my way through the world. And I suppose that's sort of just the origin of my hikikomori-ness. Like, that's the origin of how I got to that whole point. And that's sort of the future as well. That's where I'll be going from here on, just because the world is too bad and I hate it.